I get asked what my favourite JRPGs are all the time, and I think I could easily rattle off my top 5 favourites, but I was recently asked what my top 5 favourite Tales games are, and damn that's tricky. Now just quickly before we start, the people that asked me about my top 5 favourite Tales games are the same people behind an upcoming MMO, so this video is sponsored by Warlords Awakening. Warlords Awakening has 5 classes to choose from, countless monsters to slaughter, fast-paced leveling that gets quicker with each subsequent character you create, no pay-to-win microtransactions, real-time PvP, and your little companion pets turn into giant rideable mounts at the touch of a button. The developers are always listening to the community, and the direction of the game will be heavily influenced by community feedback. Check out the link in the video description to learn more, and keep an eye on my channel for an exclusive giveaway next week. And now, on with the video. The only thing I want to mention before diving straight in with number 5 is that these are obviously based on my own feelings and opinions. The enjoyment of a game is very subjective, so let's kick things off with a controversial one. Zestiria would probably make it on most people's worst Tales games list, and while I do think its gear system is garbage and its water dungeon with the eye teleporters is one of the worst dungeons ever made in a game ever, there is one thing I can't overlook: Edna. Characters are the most important thing for me when consuming any kind of media. Dragon Ball Z would be largely trash if Vegeta didn't exist, but since he does exist and is amazing, I love Dragon Ball Z. Edna is my Vegeta in Zestiria, and while I wouldn't go as far as to say the game would be 100% bad without her, it definitely wouldn't have made my top 5 if she didn't exist. Eternia makes the list because I felt like no list would be complete without at least one of the more retro titles in the series, and Eternia is my favourite of those earlier entries. Tales really hit its stride with Eternia, and the world it created was so great it spawned an anime and a short-lived MMO. Reed is also one of the only main protagonists in the series I actually really like. Maybe a little nostalgia is at play here as well. Eternia on the PSP was one of the first couple of Tales games I played after Symphonia on the GameCube. I should really go back and give it another playthrough one of these days. Number 3 is the trickiest one for me. I know without a shadow of a doubt which ones take spots 1 and 2, which leaves me having to choose between 4 entries I really like to put in number 3. I really enjoyed Tales of Xillia 2, I really enjoyed Hearts R, but I have to narrow this spot down to Tales of the Abyss and Tales of Vesperia. For now, at least, I think number 3 has to go to Tales of the Abyss. There are some characters I really love, like Jade, and the world building is really great. I love phonons and phonic arts, and just the lore behind Tales of the Abyss. Vesperia Definitive Edition will probably take this spot once it's released. The problem I have with the original Xbox 360 release we got in the West was the gameplay. Everything felt like it was in slow motion. The controls felt a little unresponsive to me, especially in combat, but it does have one of the best casts of characters in the whole series, so assuming the definitive remaster has things playing a little smoother, it'll take this number 3 spot. Symphonia was my favourite for at least 8 years. It still remains one of my favourite games ever. I was 12 or 13 at the time, walked into my local game store and saw 2 brand new GameCube releases on the shelves: Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness and Tales of Symphonia. I immediately bought Pokemon XD, then returned it the next day and swapped it for Tales of Symphonia. I was hooked almost immediately. I remember listening out and waiting for my mum to fall asleep so I could turn the game back on and play to the early hours of the morning on a school night. I just couldn't get enough of it. Fast forward to today and I must have played it through at least 6 or 7 times. I've got a tattoo of Kratos in his Judgment outfit on one arm and a tattoo of a Crucius crystal on the other. I love the story and the characters, and I even have my own headcanon for characters I think are awesome that didn't get much screen time, like Forcestus. I never thought there would ever be another game I'd love more, but then... I love Tales of Exilia. I think it's one of the most underrated in the franchise. I rarely see people talking about it when Tales becomes the topic of conversation. The game itself is probably on the same level as Symphonia for me, but in Symphonia, as I do in most games, I was only attached to one character. I liked some others, but I only truly loved Kratos. In Exilia though, I loved Mila Maxwell, I loved Agria, I loved Elise and Tipo, I loved the Chimeriad as a whole, and even more so than Kratos in Symphonia, I loved Gaius in Exilia. I have tattoos of both Gaius and Agria, and even crazier than that, I legally changed my name in real life to Gaius Maxwell, which took inspiration directly from Gaius in Exilia and the summon spirit Maxwell from the Tales series as a whole. The story, the gameplay, the characters, I just loved it all. Exilia deserves its spot just slightly ahead of Symphonia in my number 1 spot. And that wraps up my list. Before we end here, I just wanted to mention that I'll have an extended gameplay and review video for Warlords Awakening next week, and there'll also be a giveaway as part of that, so keep an eye out for it, and be sure to check the link in the video description to learn a little bit more about the game. Also, I'd love to see what your top Tales list looks like, so head on down to the comments and let's see if the unlikely Zestiria makes anybody else's list. Thanks for liking, subscribing and sharing, and I'll see you all soon.